Hi guys, we're back. Southern Belle Atheism. Sorry, I got a little bit choked up there. I want to do a little bit of house cleaning, but before we continue, I have on today Lyn Wachowski, and she is the writer blogger of Musings of a Birth Mom. So we are going to be talking a little bit more about the series we've been doing this week on adoption trafficking, domestic adoption trafficking, and so. But before that, I just want to talk about, I'm going to have Reese Heinen back on soon of the H&H cast and Dan Simpson of Atheism Chat. So shout out to them. I also want to give a thank you to Lalo DeGosh and Andy O'Brien of Inflame Media, and I know everyone knows them. And also, Clarissa and I will be bringing some other whimsical stuff as she promised later on to the channel. But today we're going to talk about, on Southern Belle Atheism, we're going to talk about a very sobering and real problem, a violation of human rights. And it's something that I'm very passionate about and I've been addressing for a while now. And so I'm going to introduce Jennifer Lyn Wachowski, and I'm just going to give her the floor. And of course, you guys remember we had Lyn on last week, which started this trilogy of adoption trafficking podcasts that we've been doing. So Jennifer she's a mom, she's a blogger, writer, activist, reformer. She's very passionate. Her story is very inspiring, very enlightening. It definitely needs to be heard. And not only that, she's great at debunking a lot of the lies and propaganda that's being put out there about adoption. There's a lot of deception and a lot of human rights violations that Jennifer has been great at debunking, and she has a way with words. So I'm just going to give her the floor and let her take it away. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, so for propaganda, everybody, the general public that isn't aware of all the things that we're aware of, they have this image in their head of adoption, and that's purposeful. The industry has made you have that image in your head that way. It's loving, it's the good choice, there isn't millions of dollars involved in it, babies are just out there waiting for homes and nobody wants them, and nothing could be further from the truth. What the reality is it's a billion-dollar industry. It's very rare that a baby isn't wanted, that it's supply and demand. There are, oh gosh, I couldn't even tell you, but for every baby that is born in this country, there's hundreds of people who want that baby. So basic business, supply and demand. When the supply is low, the demand is high, the price goes up. Adoption agencies charge anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 for a baby when it's given up for adoption. So the propaganda, they want you to think that this is this great thing, because if the general public doesn't see it that way, then it hits them in the pocketbook. And there are some agencies where the people running it don't make anything but pennies. And usually you're going to see these agencies working with foster kids who really truly do need a home. And not every foster kid, needs a home. Not every foster kid was taken from its parents because of, a good reason. And we'll get into that later because there's money in there too. But it's a myth. That's not the reality. In order for a mother to surrender her baby to adoption, she has to be made to feel that she is not good enough for that baby. So in the baby scoop era, they used to straight up take your babies, tell you weren't going to keep them, you did wrong, they shamed you, you had sex outside of marriage. Today, that's accepted. Single motherhood's accepted, sex outside of marriage is accepted. So they have to do something different. They have to make you think that you're not good enough for your baby by making adoption this glittery, rainbow-infused, awesome thing. You're giving your child a better life. When the reality is, it's not a better life. It's a different life, and nobody can guarantee a better life, adoption or no adoption. So we had the article about the adoption agency that needed baby cuddlers. Mm-hmm. And this wasn't even in the article. It never mentioned this was an adoption agency that was plastering this article everywhere, but it was. So at first glance, it seemed like something really awesome. Oh, cradle care, so moms can decide whether or not they want to keep or surrender their babies. And I won't disagree. There is a place for cradle care, absolutely, because when you don't have cradle care, you have moms that are forced to make a decision about adoption within 24 to 72 hours after birth, or sometimes before birth, as we've seen with Kimberly Rossler. So cradle care does have its place. It gives moms the time to really understand what they're doing to live without their baby, to understand the magnitude of that. Because I can't tell you how many moms we've had come to us a week after surrendering going, help me get my baby back. I changed my mind. So that kind of takes that out of the mix a little bit. But when you have an adoption agency running cradle care, then things get a little bit skewed because they have a vested interest in taking this baby and adopting it out because that's where their money is coming from. So when you have cradle care with an adoption agency, the chances of that mom actually being able to have an informed choice and actually look adoption in the face and understand what this really isn't very high. They're going to still be fed the lies, that this is a better life, the propaganda. And as far as this article is concerned, the whole point behind this article, if they only needed 5 to 10 volunteers to cuddle babies, why the national campaign to put this out here? Because that wasn't what it was about. For one, it wanted to make adoption look gushy, cuddly. Who doesn't want to cuddle babies all day? I mean, I would volunteer to go cuddle newborn babies all day. Every time one of my family members has a newborn baby, I'm over there cuddling them. But the point behind it was a headline. It caught America's attention. We need volunteers to cuddle baby.
Yeah.
The reality was they wanted money, plain and simple.
For the original source, they can actually go to your blog, can't they? And they can find the original source that links to ABC.
Yes, ABC News originally broke the story. And when you look at some of the names in the story where the information was coming from, it's straight from Spence Chapin Adoption Agency in New York, one of the oldest adoption agencies in our country. They have been in the business of separating mothers and children for a very long time.
They were big. I'm sorry. They were big during the baby scoop era.
Oh, for sure.
They were the ones that were really hardcore forcing adoptions, like ripping babies away from mothers.
Absolutely. And that didn't work anymore. So they had to up their ante. And
so we want to make it very clear, if you support this certain agency, that's what you're supporting. Yeah, it's kind of like supporting
the history. They have a long history of forced adoption.
So basically you're supporting human trafficking, you're supporting the baby scoop, you're supporting all the tactics of Georgia Tan.
Yeah. How did they manage to stay in business through all that? Any agency who was in the business of doing what baby scoop era moms had done to them should have been prosecuted for human rights violations, like any Nazi would. Because if any other human being was doing that to people, they would be sitting in a prison cell right now with kidnapping.
And let's give out the name of that agency again. They are
Spence Chapin. Spence SPENCE-CHAPIN. And what's funny is a couple of years ago they came out and they said they would no longer be facilitating infant adoptions because the stigma around single parenthood had dissipated, so they couldn't find enough newborns to do this. So basically they said they couldn't find enough babies, it wasn't worth it anymore, they weren't going to be facilitating these adoptions. And they made a big press release about this. However, if you look on their website, they still are facilitating these adoptions, but there was no big press release. Oh, guess what? We're going to do newborn adoptions again. So this could be, I'm not them, so I don't know what the thinking is behind it. I am a marketing student, so my thinking is, if we're going to start facilitating newborn domestic infant adoptions again, then we need to, get a push out there to get the attention, the notoriety, to make our agency known, to get more moms, get more babies. If we make adoption, it's propaganda. We have to make it look good. You make it look good, it works. And it's pretty despicable. So if you look at their salaries, the CEO they're making 6-digit salaries
off of selling,
and they're and that's their net worth and assets is over 55 million. So when you go to their Facebook page after that article was out, we don't need volunteers anymore. The best way you could help a baby is to give us money.
Yes.
So that's it's just plain and it's in your face. How could you even deny that wasn't the intention behind the article?
And we really need to get more people involved as far as on the legal side of this, as far as getting people to actually go into these places. And now, why is that hard to do? Because adoption law is very specific. It's a certain type of law. Usually you need a degree in it in order to practice adoption law. It is very specialized and it's expensive. So getting adoption attorneys to turn on the adoption industry is like getting them to turn on
the person who feeds them.
Yeah, exactly. the hand that's feeding them. They're butting the hand.
Right. And then you have conflicts of interest within changing laws with lawmakers. How many lawmakers are adoptive parents? How many Supreme Court justices are adoptive parents?
And they're the ones that have the money to buy a baby when, oh, I'm infertile, I want a baby, or I just decided I want another baby, so I'm just going to buy it instead of have it.
Right.
And so these people do this, and it's liberal as well as conservative. It's bipartisan. It's across the board. Everyone's doing it. Some of the most liberal people I know, progressive people I know, actually support adoption trafficking.
Yeah. And it really boils down to the propaganda. Their whole lives, they've seen nothing but how great adoption is. And it takes true education, and it takes somebody willing to open their eyes and be educated about it for change to occur. And that's with any social issue. You have to have people willing to stand up. And I think we're on our way. Just going through the history of adoption, I've never seen a time in adoption history where so many people are vocal. I mean, you go in some of these adoptive parent groups and they're going, why are there so many anti-adoption people out there? And we're not anti-adoption. We're anti-unethical adoption. And what that means is, yes, adoption does have its place. Don't get me wrong, but it's for true orphans. It's for people who really do need a home. It's about finding a child a home. And even then, adoption as it exists now, it changes the child's birth certificate. It changes their heritage. It shouldn't be like that. But, that's another issue altogether. But if it is needed, obviously, for a permanent home for a child who truly needs one, then adoption has its place. But as it exists now, nowhere in the rest of the world does adoption work the way it works in our country. Nowhere.
And that's sick. There's a lot that's wrong with it. I had on another lady, Megan, lovely lady Megan, yesterday, who's an adoptee, and she told her story. And she's married to a Christian Palestinian, and he and his family, they were so grossed out by what we do here, by how we demonize motherhood, single motherhood, or poor, impoverished motherhood. And for those of you still not getting it, still wondering, well, how can you separate a mother from her child? How can you coerce her? You demonize her. The scarlet letter is still very much going on. And sometimes it's not so much about motherhood as it is about income level, about poverty. And, you play on that very innate, very, that unconditional love that women just inherently have for their children, right? You play on that by saying, don't you want the best for your child? Don't you want your child to have this? And you really everyone knows what mother guilt is like if you have children.
Oh yeah. And you would die for your kids. You would die for them, for their safety. If I knew that me dying would give my kids a better life, then I would die for them. And like I always say, you put a proverbial gun to that child's head. The mother sees the gun at their child's head, and they say, if you keep your child, it's the same thing as us pulling the trigger on this gun. What is any mother going to do? They're going to not pull the trigger. So they're made to think that a life with them will be the same as destitution, poverty, all those bad things that come with that, when, that's not necessarily true with the right support system. And we have groups now for that, and enough confidence in herself. Her child can go on to do great things. Some of the greatest people that we have ever known in this world grew up in poverty and destitution, and it shaped who they have become. It made them great. We would never know who they were otherwise. You can't rob people of their diversity. That's what makes us great as human beings, challenges and overcoming them. Now, I'm not saying that every situation of poverty is going to make somebody great, but certainly why should we say that it's going to be a better life when it could be just as good or better, being raised in poverty?
Well, and we have the issue of how many of these adoptive parents are completely spoiling these children because they finally got their toy and they treat them like a pet instead of a child.
Right.
And, so they go through this whole process of shaming marginalized and disenfranchised, impoverished women for their rich clients. How do they come in contact with these women to begin with? Let's talk about how they come in contact with the mothers so everyone kind of has a clear view of how that happens.
Sure. The most common way is advertising. They will put ads in the Penny Saver and local newspapers in the back of Cosmopolitan. They will target magazines that they know these women are going to read when they flip through. They will go to Crisis Pregnancy Center. They will put their pamphlets there. They will scour any corner, any orifice that they think a single impoverished mother, especially inner city. Inner city is typically known for being of a lesser income, more impoverished people. So, they will paper the inner cities. I know in my situation, I found my adoption agency at the back of a Cosmo magazine. And that's how I found it. And then, just everywhere, TV, movies, everything portrays adoption. So some mothers, they get themselves into a situation where they're pregnant and they don't know what to do, and everybody freaks out, and then they have all these images that they didn't even know that they were being subtly brainwashed by. Every movie they've ever seen, every commercial where adoption is this great thing, and then that pops into their mind. Well, what about adoption? And they'll seek them out, and thinking that this is, some kind of good solution, especially open adoption. You think, well, and this is what I thought, well, at least I'll always know who my child is. I'll know them. I'll know where they are. It's not really like adoption because we'll always know each other. But what they don't tell you is, your chances of your open adoption closing or semi-closing are really, really high. Really, really high. It's a delicate relationship, and insecurities of human beings play in, and kind of takes over. But yeah, they'll go anywhere to find these moms.
Well, and you mentioned open adoption. Those adopters, they retain the rights, guardian rights to your child. They're legally the parents, and I don't think that's not fully explained by agencies, whether it's the social workers of the agencies, the caseworkers, or the attorneys. And remember, agencies have their own social workers, caseworkers, attorneys, and they're not going to tell you that you have no recourse if these people decide to close the adoption, and they can do it because their ego gets in the way, because, science is key here. You cannot break a mother-child bond. The reason why now they push to take newborns away from the mother within the first 3 days, 72 hours, is simply because mother and child are psychologically the same for the first 18 months. And we have lots of scientific journals and abstracts. All of us, Jennifer has got a lot of this on our blog. So do you want to talk about the science there a little bit?
Yeah. So the thing that pops out at me the most, the thing that I thought was the coolest thing ever, is a baby's dialect is formed before they're even born. They did studies in newborn cries mimic their mother's speech patterns. So their language, the language of their tribe, is already formed before they're even born. A baby knows the smell of the mother. A baby knows the sound of a mother's voice. A baby can smell, as far as smelling the mother, the baby knows the smell of the mother's placenta. The bond that is there, you have your child's DNA inside your body. For every child that you have, little bits of their DNA remain in your body, sometimes for up to 20 years. When a mother is pregnant with a baby, the baby can send out hormones that will repair the mother's heart or other organs if there's damage. Just the scientific evidence is there. There is a unique bond between mother and child that we don't even fully understand. It's an emotional bond at first. So when a baby is separated from a mother, they do suffer a wound. And some people will argue with this. Some people will say no, and mostly it's adoptees who are comfortable with their adoption because for whatever reason, they don't feel like they suffered some kind of wound. That doesn't mean that they didn't. It might just mean that it's not recognizable. This wound is an emotional wound. It is an emotional memory instead of an intellectual memory, because a newborn baby doesn't have intellectual memories at the time. But some adoptees will go, if you just look at the page, Adoption is Trauma, how many adoptees do we have on there saying that their adoption caused them emotional wounds their whole life? So yeah, there's certainly a bond between a mother and a child before they're born.
Well,
you can't break it.
Yeah, exactly. When Megan was on yesterday morning, she talked about this fibromyalgia that she had been diagnosed with at a very young age, and the fact that she'd always had aches and pains. And for the first, I think, 6 weeks of her life, when she was in volunteers or foster moms were cuddling her, she doesn't know what happened. Like, whatever happened, newborn babies, there's a certain well they do for their mother that they do in utero. And this is why a lot of times, as I've said before, adopted children, babies, newborns actually always well. They're not colicky. They can never really find any sort of medical diagnosis for why they're doing this. And so by keeping them in a foster family before selling them or completing their sell, and I'm just stating it blankly, like what the industry does by selling the baby, they're trying really hard to break that bond. Well, you can't break it because DNA is a thing, guys. And therefore they're inducing a lot of trauma. They're inducing a lot of trauma that will subconsciously come out in things like autoimmune diseases and deficiencies that we're seeing now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, you'll have two types of people. And I know this just because I used to work in an institution where we had foster kids that had been abused, foster kids who had been, you know, abandoned. But you'll have two types of kids. You'll have the kid that'll take a wound, and they will they'll be an overachiever. They'll try their best to never disappoint, to always do good, because they don't want to be rejected again. And then you'll have another type, and they'll go the opposite way, and they will just challenge you in every way because of what happened to them. And there's some kids that grow up and they don't even realize that they've been doing this their whole life. They have been trying to please and please and please because that emotional wound is there. They were rejected by their mother. Even if it wasn't her choice, it was a rejection in their emotional memory. So, you know, you go one of two ways with that. You either, you know, do everything you can to please your adoptive parents to make sure they don't reject you. You love them, you'll defend them, you'll never admit that there's anything wrong with adoption. It's the greatest thing in the world. Or you'll have the opposite. And I mean, that's what you're seeing on a lot of these outspoken adoptees. You're seeing them, you know, admitting their truths. But yeah, and not all, you know, I don't want to paint the picture that adoptive parents are evil, because not all of them are. I've met some really great adoptive parents, you know, that have come forward and said, you know, I had no idea, and I really appreciate being educated about this. Sometimes they're tricked too. But when you take, and you know, they just know what the agency is telling them. And some of them refuse to be educated otherwise. But the ones who actually take the time to go over the information that is out there and apply it in their lives. I mean, there was recently a blog post out there from somebody who was hoping to adopt, and she had been following a lot of our blogs, adoptee blogs, birth mom blogs, and she wrote her own blog stating that she was not going to adopt because she didn't want to inflict that trauma on anybody. So, you know, that feels good that we're heard, that we're, you know, that it's working. But yeah, I don't want to paint the picture that all adoptive parents are bad, but when you blatantly turn your cheek and you don't want to hear our truths and you want to silence us because it makes you feel uncomfortable, then you've crossed the line into the bad apple. Because how can you turn your cheek to this? This is the truth for me and other people and a lot of adoptees. And maybe it's not everybody's story, but you have to acknowledge that these stories exist. And if they do exist, then why are we not changing? Even if one person had something bad happen to them because of this, then that's one too much. You know, why aren't we changing things?
Exactly. And the reason I think that why is this not being changed is because this is an industry in America. Everyone wants a newborn, just like everyone wants a puppy and a kitten. They think it's a blank slate, even though genetically, DNA, guys, we know that newborns, babies are not blank slates. We know this. And yet still the lie that's pimped out that these are unwanted and unloved, when these are, no one is going to carry a baby to term and just not love it at all or completely unwanted it.
Right.
Everybody knows that, you know, and I really think these adopters, the bad ones, or the bad apples, as you call them, I really think that in the end, they know deep down that they have supported a form of human trafficking. They supported baby buying and baby selling. Not only that, but they have exploited women, which, you know, when you say that in certain circles and people automatically think, oh, you're a feminist, you're one of those feminazis or whatever. But when you apply it to motherhood, they've exploited motherhood. And they've
exploited the most sacred thing that you could possibly exploit in this world.
And everyone likes babies. They're exploiting babies. They're selling babies. They have denigrated. They have exploited, like you said, one of the most sacred bonds, the most sacred bond. I would say the foundation of the
foundation of humanity.
Exactly. So
we
talk more.
wouldn't exist if that wasn't there. I mean, can
Exactly.
you imagine if mothers just gave birth and didn't love their babies and just walked away? Humanity would cease to exist. There's
Hmm.
a reason we have the bond that we have, and it's to carry humanity on. Like I said, if we didn't have that bond, we wouldn't. Nobody gives birth and says I don't love that baby. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are rare instances, maybe some mental illness, where somebody might think that they don't. Love their child, but 99.9% of the time, this is a mother who wants her baby, who is going to be grief-stricken giving her baby up, but she feels, because she's been made to feel, that this is really truly what's best for her child, and that's sad.
So let's talk about how culture does play. I always think of it as sort of the capitalist spin that the adoption agency puts on the glossy, rosy. They have to paint it as unwanted babies, as children just thrown away. They have to paint it that way because it is human trafficking. And it is
Right.
it is selling human beings. And we look at it and we contrast it to places such as Western Europe and Canada, where adoption is for true orphans. It's for people in need. It is not for newborns. It's not a business and industry. What's the current number? $15 billion industry selling babies.
Yeah.
So, and you asked if you have a friend who lives in France or Germany, you ask them about adoption and tell them what's going on, and they are appalled. I mean, this is a horrific human rights violation, because they do have a different system. They are democratic socialist. They do provide federally protected family leave programs. They do have universal health care. Look at Canada compared to us. So this domestic adoption is the most ignored violation of human rights, I think, in the last 2 centuries.
And culture-wise, the propaganda has shaped the culture of America in regards to adoption. And that was the intent. As soon as the baby scoop era started exiting you can find news articles on Google if you start searching in the 70s, people freaking out because the number of babies available has been declining so fast for people who wanted to adopt them. The industry knew they needed to change course. They knew that they could no longer just take these babies by saying you're an unmarried mother, shaming the grandparents into making their daughters, give their babies up. They knew they had to change course. So instead, they began to paint a picture of something beautiful and something better. And then they just slowly took off with that. And it worked. America fell for it. I fell for it. Everybody fell for it. It's not something beautiful. It begins with a loss. The only beautiful thing about it is the people who get the baby. The infant suffers a loss, the mother suffers a loss, and it's not a triad. It is so much more than that. It is mothers, fathers, grandparents, cousins, siblings, the adoptees' future children. I mean, the ripple effect is, how could you say it just involves 3 parties? It doesn't. It involves way more than that, way more. And I didn't have any idea just until just recently how my daughter's adoption affected even my sister's. And then when my sister was able to have her first conversation with my daughter, and she sobbed because she was so happy, I realized that this was something that had affected her probably as much as it had affected me, and I didn't know. She'd never said anything, probably because she didn't want to make me feel bad. But yeah, it's not just something between 3 parties. It goes way further than that. It's destroying families. It always begins with a loss. It's not just the mother's loss or the adoptee's loss. It's the grandparents' loss, the aunt's loss, the uncles, the siblings, the cousins. The adoptee's children lose their heritage. Does anybody ask them how they're going to feel about their parent being adopted? No, because they don't exist yet. My niece and my nephew are adopted, or my niece and my nephew's father is adopted. So they are the children of an adoptee. And that brings up a whole, things that I've never even thought of before, but the questions that they ask, it's complicated. You can't just say, oh, it's a triangle, because it's not at all.
And yeah, and it even makes waves out into society, which is where, people like I come in. We grow up in communities where we witness this. We witness this. I call it a violation of human rights. It's just not. It is the exploitation, first and foremost, of women, because it treats women as broodmares for wealthier people. It just does. And this is one reason why white babies go for so much more, because as Lyn Johansson said when she was on, white people are the ones primarily adopting because they're the ones with the big bucks.
Right.
So, but it across the board,
Yeah.
any infant is wanted because people want that newborn, kind of like people
Right.
want that kitten or that puppy.
Right.
And then what happens when that child hits puberty and things don't quite go as expected, you know?
Right. Well, because once they hit puberty, as everybody knows, when kids hit puberty, that's when they really start challenging you. They're coming into themselves. They are testing their limits. They have hormones raging through their bodies. They sometimes can't control themselves. That's normal stuff. But in a family where you're not genetically like everybody else, it could be misunderstood. And I did a blog post about this, about the adoptee who doesn't fit in genetically with the rest of their family. The rest of the family thinks that they should conform to the way they are when genetically they aren't even like them. And instead of building up the things that they do have, things that could be like strong-willed could be seen as defiant, depending on your take on it. Personally, I come from a family of very strong-willed women. So we harness that, and I teach my daughters to use that for good instead of get them in trouble, but I know what that's like because I'm like them genetically. It might leave an adoptive mother or adoptive father puzzled as because they don't know, they're not genetically like that. They don't know how to harness that in, and that's just the fact. And you hit puberty and then you think, oh my goodness, I have a child that is just running amok when they're just trying to find their place in the world. They don't know who they are. That it hits them. Puberty is when you self-discover,
Yes.
and they don't know who they are.
Let's talk a little bit more about the legalities of adoption, like what rights you lose, and well, you lose all your rights as a mother, and adoptees, as you said, their birth certificates are changed. So explain to everyone out there now how people are rewriting birth certificates. This is perfectly legal, and they're putting the adopter's name on it and erasing all records.
Oh yeah. So as we know, when you sign away your rights, that's every right to your child. Even in states that enforce open adoptions, it's contract law. It's not parental right law. So if an open adoption closes on you and you live in a state where it was enforceable and you try to challenge that, I mean, you're pretty much guaranteed to lose because it's a contract, and all an adoptive parent has to do is come into court and say, this is not in the best interest of my child, and as the one holding all the parental rights, I want this contract terminated. And 99% of the time that's going to happen. So that's one of the rights that you lose, the right to challenge any open adoption close. But as an adoptee, because mothers lose everything, as an adoptee, you will have the adoptive parent's name put on your birth certificate as the people who gave birth to you. Your original birth certificate is sealed away, and unless you live in a state that allows open access, and there is only a couple that allows true access to original birth certificates, other states that allow it, they will allow for a birth mother to come in and redact her name off of the birth certificate, which in my opinion is not really equal and true access to original birth certificates, as somebody can come in and alter it. So they lose the right to their birth certificate, their original birth certificate that states it's a birth certificate who gave birth to you. The adoptive parents' names will go on there. It's pretend. Let's pretend like we gave birth to this baby. They will also lose in some cases, I know, and it's not the norm, but some adoptees are having issues with new laws put in place for national security with getting a passport to travel outside of the country because they have an amended birth certificate, because you are reissued a birth certificate when you're adopted, and it's amended, and the first one is sealed away. Now, as a birth mother, I signed a piece of paper terminating my parental rights. It was a legal document that severed my parental rights. I called the courthouse a year ago, and I wanted a copy of that just for, investigative person. I didn't remember what was that, on the paper. I wanted to see what it was that I had signed. I know it was read to me, and Wisconsin works a little bit differently than most states. It's probably the least adoption-friendly state in the country. So I wanted to see a copy of what I had signed, and I was told that I could not get a copy of it. It was sealed away with all the adoption records. So a legal piece of paper that I signed that terminated my rights to my child, I am not allowed to have a copy of. It was sealed away. So here's where we get into unethical adoptions. If you feel that you were the victim of an unethical adoption, that you were coerced, that you were forced, that you were threatened, and your termination of parental rights is sealed away forever and nobody can get it, even if you're suing, no attorney can get it, nobody can get it. How does that work? Why is it sealed away? So, yeah, how would you challenge that? You don't have any proof. It's all sealed away.
So
Nobody can get it.
is there a process for people who are asking, is there a process to unseal it? Is that there's no process?
No, no, not at all. I was told straight up that I can't have it. Too bad. Now, my daughter, if she wants her original birth certificate in my state, she can get it, but only because I signed an affidavit giving her permission to.
Okay.
But I will not have access to anything, not a record. But she should not need permission for me to get her original birth certificate.
That is, well, we're just going to go ahead and call it evil. Just the fact that you can never get your own records, that is unheard of. Because there's
it's a birth record. Why would a birth record need to be altered?
And a lot of this, and this is something that's coming out as well with the amount of money that attorneys are making. Like, why are lawmakers writing laws like this? Because the adoption attorneys are proposing the laws. They're the ones writing the bills. They're the ones who have the interest. They're the ones making the dough. The same reason it's really hard to get people with money to back this is because we're fighting a multi-billion-dollar industry now. And also those,
they have money.
And those sealed records, they're going to list how much money once you start chasing or going down that trail, you're going to find out how much money these people are making selling babies when you get into all those papers.
It's not as difficult as people think. Most adoption agencies are nonprofit, and that's their tax records are public information. I mean, you can just do a Google search for a 990 form for a nonprofit and you'll find it. But I don't want people to think that nonprofit means they don't make a profit, because according to the IRS, anybody can be a 501c3 as long as their first purpose isn't to make money, as long as their main purpose is not to make a profit. You can be a nonprofit and make $1 million a year in salary as long as that's not your first goal, is to make money. So you take in whatever donations you get, you pay your expenses for the purpose of your nonprofit, and whatever's left over is your salary. So the more money you raise, the more your salary is going to be at the end of the day.
And do we want to get into what's happening in Mobile, Alabama, and use Adoption Rocks as an example of a current, I call it a baby selling ring, human trafficking ring?
Alabama is the only state that allows pre-birth consent where you have to do nothing after the birth of the baby to reaffirm that consent. So, you know, Kimberly Rossler, we all know what's going on with that. She signed a pre-birth consent. She went before a judge.
And it's not supposed to be, it's not supposed to be finalized adoption papers. We just want to make it clear, but it can stand alone as pre-birth consent. This is why we're trying to eradicate it.
It's a pre-birth, it's a pre-birth revocation of her parental rights. Now, the parental rights, this is how revoking parental rights works. Once you sign a TPR, termination of parental rights, that does not automatically sever your parental rights. It has to go before a judge, it gets signed off on, then it becomes official. So when women do this after birth, they sign that paper. The attorneys, you know, most women don't know this because they don't see the workings outside of this. You sign that termination of parental rights. It gets brought to a judge. The judge signs off on it. Your parental rights are terminated. Adoption is separate than parental rights. So the termination is a totally separate entity of the finalization of an adoption. Once your parental rights are terminated, the adoption agency now has guardianship of your child until an adoption is final. If it's a private adoption, then usually the prospective adoptive parents or their attorney will have guardianship of your child until the adoption is finalized. So what happened in Kimberly's case is, and the way Alabama law works is, you can have a mom go before a judge and essentially terminate her parental rights before the birth of a child. Now, like I said, it does have to go to a judge after birth and be finalized. It's called pre-birth consent in Alabama. If you do nothing after the birth of your child to say you want to take that pre-birth consent back, they will terminate your parental rights. Now, what happened with Kimberly's case is she was unrepresented. She had no attorney. Donna Ames was the attorney working for Kate Sharp, who was the prospective adoptive mother. Because Kimberly was unrepresented, there was no adoption agency. Even though Adoption Rocks is not technically an adoption agency, they acted as an adoption agency. They matched her with Kate Sharp. They counseled her. Donna Ames was her point of contact with Kate Sharp. They acted in the manner of an adoption agency. Kimberly didn't know they were not an adoption agency. So she went before a judge, and she was told that she needed to sign this paper in order to get any kind of financial assistance while she was pregnant from Kate Sharp. So she did what they told her to with Donna Ames, who was not her attorney, but Kimberly did not know that sitting next to her. Further along in the pregnancy, she changed her mind. She did not want to pursue an adoption plan any longer. She informed Donna Ames of this. She informed Kate Sharp of this. Donna Ames advised her as an attorney that she did not need to do anything else as long as she took the baby home from the hospital. An adoption attorney who represented Kate Sharp, who Kimberly thought represented her, told her she did not need to do anything else if she took the baby home that would revoke her pre-birth consent. So that's what she did. What Donna Ames told her was a lie. She was unrepresented. The person who worked for the person who wanted her baby lied to her about how to revoke her consent. She brought the baby home, and weeks later, the police came and took the baby. And what's funny to me, and I still haven't been able to figure this out, is they didn't go by traditional adoption means to get the baby. They had a different judge, not a judge that deals with adoption cases. He deals with like family services, CPS. They went to this judge, and they told the judge that Kimberly was a danger to her child, based on Donna Ames' testimony that she was unstable. And the judge ordered that the baby be taken and given to Kate Sharp. All of these judges are in on, they're all in each other's pockets. They all know each other. They all fundraise for each other. They all campaign for each other against any outsiders. But I haven't been able to figure out why Donna didn't just go ahead and take that pre-birth consent and bring it to a judge and have it signed off on. And finalized.
She was making profits, and one thing about all the judges, what is it? Davis sits on the board of Adoption Rocks. Is he still currently on the board? The original judge. Is he?
He was. I'm not sure if he still is, because the Adoption Rocks website disappears and reappears. If you drive by their office, you'll see they're all packed up. Donna Ames has changed her website. So I'm not even sure that Adoption Rocks exists in mobile anymore, but like any agency, even though they say they're not an agency, they'll just open up under a new name and a new location and do what they've always been doing.
Well, one interesting thing about it is that not only are the judges interconnected, but the fact that they had to go between, they didn't involve CPS, DHR, they were never involved. So it not only was it a false lie, an allegation, it was defamation. I consider calling someone, it was defamation.
She works for a daycare.
Yeah.
I mean, she works for a daycare. You have to do a background check to work with kids. So she's not a danger to anybody. Yeah.
So they already knew that she wasn't a danger because she was working for a daycare. They lied. Ames lied to a judge who was also turns out to be her buddy. They're connected by campaigning. She campaigns for these judges. She's buddies with these judges. And the judge, was it Smith? It was Judge Smith, who the guy who signed the interlocutory order
Judge
to actually
Brown.
Judge Brown, sorry.
Judge Brown, yeah.
It was Judge Brown, and the order
and even he said, if I had known this was about an adoption, I never would have signed those papers. I mean, even he said that.
But we have to wonder, did he or did he not know? Because he hasn't rescinded. He can rescind that order. He can declare it wrongful, and he has declared it wrongful informally.
Right. To me, it's a horse and pony show. I didn't know. Please don't drag my name through the mud. Like I said, Adoption Rocks looks like it's fallen to pieces. I know that there have been several complaints to the IRS for them operating as an adoption agency without the proper licensing, because they did. So I don't know what's going on with that, but the whole thing stinks. No way around it.
I think we really need to hold Judge Brown accountable for the fact that he could have rescinded that, and
he could have.
And he did not. So, but again, he's a buddy. She's campaigned for him. Davis sat on the board of Adoption Rocks, and when Davis recused himself because he's the judge that Kimberly signed the pre-birth contract.
He appointed a buddy. Yeah.
He appointed. It wasn't Drunen was his own attorney, wasn't he?
And he was, yeah. He appointed his personal attorney after he recused himself for Kimberly's case to oversee the case. And this is the person who alone makes the decision on whether or not her pre-birth consent was valid. And anybody in their right mind would know That's something that wasn't informed, when you have been lied to, when you think that you're represented by somebody else's attorney. Anybody can see that pre-birth consent is not valid.
Mm-hmm.
No way in hell. I mean, you can't just take somebody's baby from them.
So on a crooked, corrupt law that demonizes motherhood and sells babies, pre-birth consent of Alabama, we're still selling people in the state of Alabama in the 21st century.
Kimberly is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
She happened to find the right people. She found Claudia and me. She found the right people to get her story out there. You have to wonder how many other Kimberlys exist, not only in Alabama, but everywhere, who just don't have the resources, the money, to fight anything. It's just, that's the way it is. And it happens every day. Mothers are not protected.
No.
The interests of adoptive parents are protected, which is why you're going to see that time frame of when parental rights can be terminated smaller and smaller. And I'm not going to tell you this is the minimum time you can wait, but you take as much time as you need. They're going to tell you this is when you're going to sign. They're not going to tell you don't have to sign right then and there. They make you think that this is it. You sign or you don't sign. This is when you have to make your decision, when the opposite is true. That's just the minimum amount of time that you have before you can make your decision.
So let's get everyone up to speed on what's happening with Elliot. You wrote another post on Musings of the Birth Mom, and it explained to everybody exactly how crooked it was. We knew that the order to seize Elliot was unlawful and wrongful, and the Judge Brown did not rescind. We knew about all the interconnections and the politics and the money involved. Even David Broom, who is
he is one of Kate's attorneys. Also connected with Adoption Rocks, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. So do you want to catch everyone up to speed on what's going on now and why Kimberly does not have her baby? Yeah,
she doesn't have a baby. Judge Druin decided that her pre-birth consent was legal, that it should be continued, that her parental rights should be terminated, that the consent she gave was informed and everything was on the up and up. Surprise, surprise. But the thing is, her attorney had put an order in for him to recuse himself as well for conflicts of interest, and he refused. So that went to the Supreme Court, whether or not Judge Druin should recuse himself. The Supreme Court has not made a decision on that yet. But they did put everything on hold. So any decisions that he's made cannot go forward until the Supreme Court decides whether or not he should have even been hearing the case to begin with. So this is for the pre-birth consent. If the Supreme Court decides that he should not have been seeing the case, pretty much things will start over again and with a different judge. If the Supreme Court decides that he had every right to hear the case, then Kimberly's case will have to go to appeal for her pre-birth consent into the appellate court, which is almost a good thing because probate court in Mobile, Alabama seems to be the most backwoods country, good old boy that you can get. Like, I scratch yours, you scratch mine. Who cares that there's a mother whose child was ripped out of her arms and she didn't consent to it? Well, pre-birth consent in general should be illegal. You should not be signing away the rights to your child before they're even born. They don't even exist yet. How can you sign away the rights to a person who doesn't exist?
Isn't that a lot like, it's selling a fetus, so isn't that selling body parts?
Sure,
it absolutely is. Illegal federally?
It is illegal.
Huh.
But yeah, I'm hoping that Alabama will hear us loud and clear, that they are living in the dark ages, that you cannot give your baby away before it's even born, and that Kimberly blows everything up because this is something that needs to be exposed, and I'm sure it happens all the time in Alabama. So where we stand now with Kimberly's case is waiting on the Supreme Court's decision. It has, what the judge, ruled recently, it has gone to appeal, just in case the Supreme Court does not rule in her favor. Appeals process is long. There's over 5,000 pages of transcripts that will need to be purchased from the courthouse in order for her future attorney to proceed with the appeal. And then if that fails, then there's always contesting the adoption. And then that'd be the process starting all over again. And then if she lost that, it would go to appeal. So it's a very long process. You would think when a child's life was involved that they wouldn't slow it down like this, but unfortunately that's how it works. We see examples of challenged adoptions all the time where, you know, you have a 7-year-old going back to their father or their mother, and then it gets to the point where some judges will say, well, yeah, you know what, you should have won, but we're going to use best interest of the child here, and the child's too old, it would be too painful for them or emotionally traumatizing for them to go back. And it's like the adoptive parents will purposely drag things out in court because they hold on to that best interest of the child if too much time goes by.
That's actually a fallacy, because that's actually shown to be false. So too much time, because kids always ache for their roots and their true mother, especially when they know who their parents are, their mom, and it's more damaging.
Kids are very, you know, they bounce back quick. Obviously, if a child has been used to a certain caregiver, it's going to be an adjustment for them, no doubt. And, you know, no matter how hard, you know, prospective adoptive parents have fought something, I do believe it should be slowly eased into, you know, getting them, you know, prepared for, you know, being given to their original natural parents. But no matter what, you should not use, it's been this many years, so the parents should get their child back, even though they should have begun with. No, that's not how it works. Parental rights in our country are a God-given right. And if you don't believe in God, it's a constitutional right.
Yeah, exactly.
So your right to parent your child is your right no matter what.
It is inherent. It is science. It is whatever you believe in as far as being. And I love that quote that Priscilla Stone Sharp always says, science abhors a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. God abhors dishonesty and deception. So there you go. There you go, good Christian people of Mobile, Alabama. You're selling babies under deception and dishonesty. That's evil.
It's the exact opposite of everything that they say that they believe in. It really is.
It is. And the people that they're taking advantage of to get the money, the donations, and the volunteer and all that do actually believe in something more than likely, especially being in Alabama. So they're taking advantage of people who would be true believers as well. So there's so many layers of just unethical behavior going on.
Well, I mean, you just look in the Bible. It says the wicked snatch the babies off the breasts of their mother.
There you go. I mean, it's this, and all these attorneys claim all these people are religious. Do you not read your own book? Why not read it? It's pretty good in some parts. Read it. This is an atheist saying this to you. Read your book, please. And we really need to stress the immorality of this. What these people have done is immoral. It is unethical, immoral, and you know it's appalling.
No matter what you believe it is.
Yeah, because so many of my humanist and atheist friends are coming out of the woodwork. They're like, this is a human rights violation. It must stop.
It is.
And so they have people from other cultures. You know, I have a Muslim friend who he can just not believe this is happening. And, you know, I've sent him some information.
American culture is the only culture that tolerates this.
I know. And I have so many people coming out in support of Kimberly, just saying this should never happen. It should never, ever happen.
I was just, when she first got a hold of us, I thought this is slam dunk. There's no way any judge is going to uphold this, but I was wrong because I didn't know everything then. I didn't know how they were in each other's pockets. I have never, ever seen anything like this, ever. I mean, and I'm sure that it's happened because nobody else has come forward, but it's disgusting.
Well, part of the reason is if you look at our Supreme Court, there's Roy Moore, there's, you know, George Wallace. A lot of these people, they're still the cronies of Wallace. Everyone knows who George Wallace is, so of course they may not have any issue with selling a newborn, like ripping it off of its mother's breast and giving it to a rich person, which is interesting because they always pimp out the what's best fallacy, like, oh, the two-parent home.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, explain what exactly Kate Sharp is.
So they always pimp out what's best for the baby is a mother or father, two married parents, stable income. Kate Sharp is in her 50s. Go. Kate Sharp is in her 50s. She is old enough to be his grandmother. Yeah, she's rich. She's unmarried. So yeah, there we go. Somebody who might not live long enough for Elliot to turn 18, for one. Somebody who is not married, for two. So Elliot has no father. If this continues. Yeah, she's got money, but it isn't her money. From everything that I can dig up, she really doesn't have her own money or her own income. Pretty much everything she has been given to her by her father, who kind of owns Birmingham.
Yeah, and
Which is
I'm in
another
Birmingham.
thing. Yeah, yeah. He calls the
Mountain Brook.
shots.
Yeah, Mountain
Yeah,
Brook is this little sort of, it's in the, or it was in the top 10 zip codes of America, zip codes. It probably is. So that means top 10, that means same
yeah.
zip code, same category as Beverly Hills and all that.
Okay.
So these people are basically a lot of the old money here. And yes, they go
Oh
back
yeah,
to, you can guess, they go back to slave days, a lot of them.
sure.
They're the people who were selling people back in the 1800s, and they're doing it
Yeah.
still now. And this is
I want it, I'll buy it.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we really need help in this state. And, I've put this out here on this channel before. I do have a lot of friends who are pretty well-known atheists who know exactly what's going on. And um, things are going to change
Yeah.
because, we
They
have to
have
stop
to.
this. We cannot allow human rights violations to exist. And I will
Right.
not stand for it.
Right.
And
And we need more people to stand up and say, we will not settle for this. The people who are voting, who are putting these people in power,
mhm,
they need to understand that they have power in their votes. They need to be very vocal about what they will tolerate. This is your state. I mean, this is
exactly.
our country, but this is your state. Whatever happens here, it's because you, as a collective people, allow it to happen.
Mhm,
The most powerful way you can stop this is by casting your ballot. You do not vote for people that would allow this to happen. When people are campaigning, you ask them, what do you think about the Kimberly Rossler case? What would you have done?
mhm.
People can lie, but you're going to get a pretty good feeling for what they think and how they believe by asking questions. You have to vote. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it, because if you don't, then you're allowing it to continue. You're just as guilty as anybody else.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah,
And it's why I'm on the Bernie campaign, and I'm a delegate for Bernie.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I want to make a difference. I want to stand up for human rights for all sentient life, and
yeah.
really bring everyone up to a where everyone can be a self-sufficient person, autonomous person, where we all are all recognized for our inherent rights. Here's the thing: you don't get to vote
As
on
a human
rights. Rights,
being,
yeah, human rights are inherent. We're born with rights, and this is
right,
so when these violations are committed, we all really need to sort of stand up and hold the line and say
right,
this will not continue. It will
right.
not continue.
You think that, because I know I thought the same thing. You think I'm just one person. What
Mm-hmm.
can I possibly do to make some kind of difference in this world, or in this town, or in my state, or in my community? And you'd be surprised. You'll be
Mm-hmm.
surprised. You don't need money. You don't need fame. You don't need notoriety. You don't need a big fancy house. All it takes is to speak up and have your
Mm-hmm.
voice heard. And you would be amazed at the things that can happen from
Yeah.
just speaking up. Be
Speaking
brave.
well, speaking well, being brave, and being confident.
Yes,
And those things
yes.
are very
And
important.
people will listen.
Yes.
They will listen. And you have to educate people. Most people have no idea. They really don't.
And this is one thing I love about your blog, Musings of a Birth Mom, is that what you're doing, you're educating people when you're writing your blog here. And I think that is just spectacular. Talk about some of your other blog posts and some of the other things that maybe we haven't touched on that you've debunked about adoption lies.
I think one of my favorite ones is, it's called Baby Scoop Era versus Coercion Era. So people don't, you'll hear a lot, that doesn't happen anymore. That was the baby scoop era. Oh, we don't do things like that anymore. And I got so sick of hearing it, because while we're not strapping women down to hospital beds, knocking them out and taking their babies and telling them that if they try to leave with the baby, they won't have a home to go to. But we are doing the same thing with a different tactic. We're using coercion. People hear coercion, they think, if you don't do this, I'll kill you. And that's not how it works. Any psychology major will tell you that there are ways for you to psychologically screw with people in the head to make them think that this is their choice and vehemently defend it. And that is what we are doing. And just like we talked about before, we're making women think that this is what's best for their child. So yeah, the coercion era is definitely what we're in. We're not baby scoop era anymore, but we are making mothers think that this is their choice. So that's one of my favorite ones. But as far as debunking, I can't think of anything really off the top of my head. I really like to debunk. I like it when adoptive parents or prospective adoptive parents, they hear that one of our moms has changed their mind and decided that they weren't going through with an adoption. And everybody always thinks that this is the end of that. They feel sorry for these parents. The truth of the matter is that 9 times out of 10, they will stalk the mother. They will send nasty text messages. They will threaten. We had one mom that the prospective adoptive parents were texting her, telling her that if she didn't give them the baby, that they were going to have all of their friends call CPS on her, so her other kids would get taken away. So that's kind of, and we had the screenshots of the text messages. We had the, everything. How can you say that that's not forced adoption when you're threatening to have people make false reports to CPS so your kids get taken away? It's ridiculous. When I see stories, like I said, I don't want to compare all adoptive parents to this, but when I see stories of women who have been assaulted and their babies ripped out of their womb, what I think of is they must not have been able to afford adoption, because that is the level of insanity that you're going to see from some people. That is the desperation. They will do anything it takes to get that baby, no matter what. And like I said, not all of them, but a good many. So when I do see news reports about somebody having their baby sliced out of their stomach, that's what I think. They didn't have enough money to adopt because it's $30,000 to $60,000.
Yes, and that's the psychology behind it. And if that's where it starts. It starts where you're that greedy, you're that coveting, and doesn't your good book say something not to covet? Isn't that one of those things? You shouldn't covet other people's family belongings.
Yeah.
It's interesting how many of these people are religious. I wish they'd read that. So
yeah, they hear what they want to hear. And if you go back into like theology, translations in the Bible for the word adoption isn't anything like in the current versions of the Bible. You take it straight from the Hebrew, adoption. The word adoption was God's word for the Israelites being his people. It was a bloodline, and meant the exact opposite of what it does now. But it's now used for something totally different. So yeah, if you really, because it is a history book of sorts. If you go back to original texts of these stories, it's nothing. You don't see anything in the Bible about adoption. You don't see a person having a baby and giving it to another person just because they thought it would have a better life. Or if anything, you see the opposites. Moses's birth mother was his wet nurse. I mean, it's pretty clear that adoption is a last resort in the Bible. It even and then when you do have the need for adoption, it even commands you in the Bible. You're supposed to take care of your family. So if so-and-so's brother dies, the brother is commanded to take care of the widow and the children and become the father. So yeah, it just drives me nuts when I hear people, I'm Christian and adoption, and like you really didn't read the book, did you? Because
they didn't.
Or you read what you wanted to read and heard what you wanted to hear, because a true Christian would be taking care of that mother who just is having some financial difficulties. You wouldn't be you're helping yourself to her baby. You're not helping her. That's not what it says.
Well, shoot, I'm an atheist. I have a couple Bibles somewhere I can mail these people. I mean, maybe they can hear. It's supposed to be your book.
Read it.
Yeah. So that's great. I'm really glad that you brought all that up, because I've heard that all those fallacies from so many religious people, and I'm like, oh, I know more about that than you do.
And it's a fallacy. It really is.
Yeah.
It's almost like I don't even want to, because I'm Christian, but I don't even want to associate myself with that word anymore, because there's so many people, the good majority, there's probably 1% that truly represent what it is that I believe when I read that book. Everybody else has taken it for their own, take gay marriage. Nowhere in the Bible does it say anything about that being something that God abhors. Divorce is actually one of the things that they talk about a lot in there, and I don't see anybody picketing in front of people's houses who've been divorced. I mean, it's hypocritical.
Yeah, those are really all very good points. Very good points.
So yeah, on the religion subject, I think people really need to get their heads out of their butts and really read what's in context, not just pick and choose verses that they think applies. Take the context.
Especially in this state with adoption, like everything you just said.
Oh yeah, for sure. A very strong religious presence down there, and And I like to call it the backwoods religion, like
Yeah.
the stuff that, I don't know, the stuff that they, like I said, they see what they want to see, hear what they want to see, hear. You're not going to find the word hate in the Bible unless it's referring to a sin that God hates. And guess what? Being gay isn't one of them.
Stealing a baby is. Stealing a baby is.
Yeah, stealing a baby is. Being gluttonous is. So anybody who's overweight, hey, you're in big trouble.
So it's, yeah. And anything else you'd like to point out on your blog? And again, it's musingsofaBirthMom.com.
Yes, it
MusingsofaBirthMom.com.
is.
And
You're gonna find I like going back to my beginning posts because you can see me coming out of the fog. You can see me finding my voice. I have some very sparkly first blog posts where it's like, yeah, I did the best thing for my kid, but I'm kind of regretting it, or kind of regretting my circumstances. But I like to see my evolution there. I like to see coming out of the shadows. I was so terrified that my family would disown me if I told them how I really felt about adoption once I realized how I really felt about it. And then when I finally did tell them, like, hey, this really isn't all it's cracked up to be, I don't even know why I was scared, because I have an amazing family. My mother, my sisters, my father, my friends, they're the best. And I know I'm lucky because not a lot of people have that. And yeah, it's really interesting to see me coming to realizations as far as my own story. And in the beginning, it's a lot of my own personal story. And then as we go on, it becomes more about taking on the industry because I'm learning more. It was like I couldn't get enough information. I have a daughter, she's adopted. I need more information. I need to know what is going on. What did I do? What's she going through? But yeah, it was a very secret, anonymous thing at first, and to an extent a little bit now, just because she is underage, and I worry if her parents found some of the things that I do, how that would affect not just me, but her, what would be told to her. I don't really worry too much about her finding what I do. She's tenacious. She's got a spirit in her. Like I said, I make strong-willed children. But yeah, still a little bit in the shadows, and that's the reality, and that's why we have such a hard time getting change, because how are people going to speak out when their children are held over their head? If you speak out, you might not see them again or hear from them again. So that's another hurdle you have to get over. I can't speak my truth without risking my child, especially those in open adoptions. What adoptive parent is going to say, sure, I still want you in their life, even though you hate adoption? That's what their family was founded on. They're going to see you as a threat, So yeah, can't really get information out there if you have something hanging over your head. But I came out of the shadows. I was done hiding. This is me.
And her two blog posts mainly that we've been talking about today, Baby Cuddlers ploy for agency to collect more money, where she debunked the ABC news report and exposed one of the oldest adoption agencies. Also, the one that we just discussed, Elliot Still Isn't Home, and that's a really good read. She has links to other sources. She also talks about some of the drama that was going on in the background behind Kimberly's back. That included her abusive ex, how Kimberly's abusive ex was in league with Kate Sharp.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of interesting stuff that's coming out about that. So if you want to know more in depth about other than what we talked about the Kimberly's case, please check that out. And give everybody any sites, any resources to go to that you can think of.
Well, let's see. My favorite, my inspiration to come out of the shadows would be Claudia's blog, Musings of the Lame. That would be my go-to. That is my go-to whenever I need. Claudia is the original, the best at finding and debunking and getting information. She's amazing. So whenever I need to educate somebody, if I know that I haven't written something about it, I will find it on her blog. Easy peasy. Hers is probably the best that I would give for information. The American Adoption Congress has some good information for adoptees. They did, I believe they did the video. It's called For Birth Mothers for Mothers. That's on Vimeo. awesome video you should look at. Kind of goes through what happened to some women through the baby scoop era and then after, and explains that, you know, it's just atrocities against human rights violations, and it's still happening today, and how birth mothers of today are going to make it better for women of the future, and that's what we're doing. Yeah, I can't really think. There's so many resources out there, so many blogs. Do not take what you're seeing from adoption.com or any site that has a vested interest in separating mothers and children to make a profit. Any site that's getting paid by adoptive parents to host their profiles.
Exactly.
You don't listen to that information. Not that there can't be some good articles out there, because there are. I have met some people that have written independent articles for some of those websites, but generally you're not going to find accurate information. And hey, maybe your child will grow up and have a better life. I don't know. I don't know your situation, but here's the thing. You need informed consent, and informed means having all of the information, all of the possibilities, everything that can possibly happen. And until you know this is a possibility, adoptees are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide. This is a possibility. Adoptees may grow up feeling disenfranchised from the rest of the world. It's a possibility that my child will suffer trauma. Not only a possibility, there's a good chance. How can you make an informed decision if you're being told nothing but the positive? You can't.
Also, I just want to mention Saving Our Sisters, Lyn Johansson's.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Saving Our Sisters. Lyn started this group, this organization, kind of as a way to make up for her loss in her life by helping others, and it has just taken off amazingly well. I mean, just the number of people we get. You know, she's pretty much the one who does the vetting and keeps everything organized. She's like a one-woman show, and I don't even know how she does it with working full-time, but you know, I do what I can to help with fundraising and getting organized in whatever way that I can. But yeah, definitely, if you are pregnant and you are considering adoption, get a hold of Saving Our Sisters, and that would be facebook.com/adoptionsos. And then you can also visit Concerned United Birth Parents website, which is cubbirthparents.org, but there's only one B in there. There are some links in there. You can donate to Kimberly's fundraiser on the Cub website. You can join SOS on the Cub website. You can donate to Cub on the website. You can donate to SOS. We are, you know, working on getting some more sisters on the ground. That's people who would work directly with these moms all over the country, and vetting and helping and checking up on them. Just pretty amazing thing she's doing there.
Also, please like the Bring Baby Elliot Home Facebook page.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, Bring Baby Elliot Home Facebook page. Easy to find. Just type in the search bar Bring Baby Elliot Home, and it'll get you there. Yeah, as much support as you guys want to give us, we'll take it. Go out there. The most important thing is educate. I know sometimes people don't have a vested interest in adoption if it hasn't touched their lives in any way. So nobody wants to go and read my blog and read through all the technicalities and the tax forms I pull up because they have no vested interest in it. But it's, even if you don't have a connection to adoption now, it touches your life. You don't even realize it. It could be your daughter. It could be your grandchild. It could be your brother, your sister, your friend. Somewhere along the lines, adoption is going to touch your life in some way. And I sure as hell don't want my daughter coerced out of her baby. And I don't think that you do either. So yeah, go ahead and educate yourself, because this is a human rights issue. And it's a slippery slope. When we allow this to happen and we don't say anything, how much further are we going to let it go? You know, when is it that we're going to come in and we're just going to say, we're going to just redistribute babies based on who deserves them? I mean, it sounds silly now, but it's really not that far off if we're allowing what's going on today to happen. And we allow somebody to come and take a baby from their mother for no reason other than she had planned an adoption before his birth.
Or that woman has more money. That
woman has more money.
Yeah.
So how far is it going to go? Are you next? Is your daughter next? Is your grandchild next? Educate yourselves. Be proactive. You know, let other people know. Don't be scared to speak up. You know, most of the time people just don't know. You know, they'll share these memes on Facebook. You know, oh, adoption is love, and most of the time they just don't know. They really don't know. You don't have to begrudge them for it if they don't know. Educate. That's how you solve anything. You educate. you come from a place of respect and compassion. Like, I understand why you feel this way, but let me tell you some facts. Let's educate here. You know, we don't have to get offended. You know, we don't have to go off the handle about anything unless it's called for. I know I've been guilty of that sometimes, but you know, everybody is. I'm passionate. But you have to educate. You got, if you're going to start right away by calling names and stuff, you're never going to educate. You're going to push people away because they're not going to want to hear it. You're coming off the wrong way. You know, unless, you know, you've tried all that and they're just still being, they go out and tell them everything. Yeah. But seriously.
Yeah, some people you just got to scream, yell, and give them hell.
Yep.
So, but sorry, I feel like I've been choking up a little bit and stampering because this is such a passionate calls to me, and it's something that, you know, I like I said, I've witnessed.
Sure.
I've stood witness, just not to one, but more than one, and I've shared what happened with you know, everyone's family on here before. So I really, really want to encourage people to please educate yourself on this. It is important. It is going on, and it's going to continue to happen because now people are putting off having children because of college and careers and the economy. So there's going to be more of a demand, and it factors in, like you said to begin with, supply and demand.
It's almost like feminism backfired a little bit, and this is a feminist issue. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
But when you certainly have the right to pursue your career, to go to college as a woman, things that we never could have done before, and that's awesome and that's great. But that stops you. Do not have the right to take somebody else's child or pursue somebody else's child or do whatever, or think that you deserve somebody else's child just because you're more successful.
And
so,
this is
this is a feminist issue. Do not suppress another woman just because you've been successful. Do not do that. No.
And I've said that before. I've called out all that before as a feminist. I've called out these progressive, successful women. That's your reproductive rights. That's not your reproductive right to someone else's uterus or baby.
It's not, you know, your reproductive rights. If you knew you wanted children and you waited till it was going to be harder for you to conceive, that was your choice. That was within your rights to choose that.
And you've already had that.
I'd also like to point out, and this is a little funny to me, as far as, you know, those better parents, the number one cause of infertility is STDs. So, so I just like to point that out as well. So, you know, don't get STDs and we'll be good. You know, safe sex, man. I don't want you taking anybody else's baby because you didn't cap it. So, so there you go.
Well said. Well said. We've covered a lot of interesting ground here, and I'm still just kind of blown away by everything going down the rabbit hole this entire year. Thank you so much to Jennifer Wachowski for being on, and
thanks for having me, Amber.
You said so many just powerful things, and I am really impressed by the work that you do, and I think you've inspired a lot of people. You've changed a lot of lives. The work you do is
well, it's, you know, it's because of everybody who reads and educates. Really, it is. Thank you for everybody who reads my blog. Thank you. Like, truly, I'm honored that people are listening. I really am.
Please see her blog, Musings of a Birth Mom. I will include the link. And thank you so much once again, Jennifer. You're an amazing, amazing, beautiful lady, and keep up the good fight. We are all with you.
We are all of one.
we are all one. We are all one on this planet, guys. We got one race. Okay. So I just want to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you for watching.
Bye.
Bye, guys.